Hello again, and welcome to the Sonic Boomers podcast. I'm Pete Torriello.
And I'm Maureen Torriello.
And we have a special guest with us making his second appearance here on the Sonic Boomers, our good friend Kevin Fay.
Back by popular demand.
And
he was one of our most popular...
Really, one of our most popular shows was the one that
so.
we did with Kevin 10 months ago now.
Wow. So happy to be back.
Oh, we're glad to have you.
And we were talking at that time about Kevin as a record collector, a vinyl collector. And that was really such a good show. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be interesting to me, maybe even more than the vinyl, because I grew up with vinyl, of course. So I know it. I didn't grow up with comic books.
Wow,
like you
didn't.
did. No.
Oh, I'm amazed.
Yeah.
I did, though, however.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. I didn't grow up with them. So for me, this is like a whole new page. Slight pun intended. So tell me, how did you get into the world of comic book collecting?
When I lived in Bloomfield, my mother used to send me, I guess when I was old enough, probably 9 or 10, down to the corner store, which was John's Market, to get either cigarettes or bread or something for dinner. Across the street was a little place called Sam's, and it was a corner confectionery fountain store. Fountain being you could go in and sit and have a soda or something, maybe a sandwich. When you walked in the door, they had all the magazines right there. But they also had a spindle. A spindle, I don't know how to explain to people who, today people wouldn't even know what that was. Maybe what you see cards on sometimes in stores today, but it was basically something that was about 5 foot high and had comics on all 4 sides of it. And there were all different comics in different rows. And you could go in and look at all the comics and choose. And in that time, in the 1960s, comics were 12 cents.
You're bringing back such memories, because that's exactly how I would get my comic books as well, except I didn't live in Bloomfield. I lived in Maplewood. And there was Jack's, was a candy store with a soda fountain. Exactly the same. It's amazing to me. I know that carousel kind of spindle thing that the comic books were displayed on. And it was the same thing. That was my reward for going to the store for my mother. She'd give me 10 cents or something to spend at the candy store, and I would save up my money and get the comics when I wanted them.
Yes.
So we're like parallel lives here.
I think so. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think as a kid that I had a comic book in my hand maybe more than a half dozen times.
Wow.
It's
I have to get you some comics.
Yeah, I was like a big TV and radio maven. Comic books, I never gravitated towards. I used to like the Flintstones, so I think I maybe had 1 or 2 Flintstones comic books at one point. And I remember I had the classics illustrated of Paul Bunyan. And I won that on the old Channel 13.
Wow.
On Juniortown with Uncle Fred Sales, and you could send in your picture, and they would have like a wheel.
Right, I kind of remember that.
And they would tape your picture onto this wheel. And I remember my mom was so pissed off because Uncle Fred said, and here's Janet Smith from Bronx, New York, and here's Joey Flibbernabber from, Hoboken or something. And then he gets to I was the last one that they brought up on the wheel. So he says, and here's Peter Torriello. And my mom is like, what the hell is that? Why didn't he say Parlin? Why didn't he say So she was
mad at him.
She was so mad. So he spins the wheel, and the thing goes like, and it comes up on my picture. So I won the comic book. And like a week later, I get this big envelope, and it says, WNTA Channel 13. Wow. I was all excited, and I open it up, and it was
it's a major award.
Paul Bunyan. And you didn't know what you were going to get. Open up this thing, and I'm reading about Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox, and and it was fun. I just never got into it like you did, or even you did, Maureen.
When you started buying comic books,
yes,
you weren't buying them at that point to be a collector, right?
No. It was basically going in and I would
Okay.
see something that appealed to me, and that would be it. But getting back to Classics Illustrated, basically, I used to go in and see these on the shelves. They were 25 cents, which was more than what I was spending.
Yeah.
But the titles, they had over probably 200, 250 titles of books that were very popular. And on the back, they've listed them: The Three Musketeers, Moby Dick, Robin Hood, Les Miserables. And you could buy these, and inside was the entire book, basically not the entire book, but a story basically based on the book
Right.
in comic form. And for a child to get this, you really enjoyed it even more because it was in a comic form. But these were not the regular comics that people bought. These were a little more special, the Classics
Right.
Illustrated,
Yeah.
because you would have to spend 25 cents to
And
get
they, and
these.
they've educated, you know.
Yes.
It's
was a
something
wonderful
that's
thing.
really, I think, lacking now. There's not too
Yes,
many
there's
ways
not.
that a young person who maybe would not be quite at the reading level to be able to enjoy the actual classic could read one of these comic books and be enriched in knowing a classic story.
Yeah. What appealed to me more in those days, which of course I have here, and these are original comics from the 1960s, Superboy, which was a 12-cent, and here's a Jimmy Olsen, which was 25 cents, because it was a larger edition.
Right.
You really could get more pages. I think it was always 80-page giant. You waited for those to come out,
Yeah.
and you saved up your money. But seeing Superboy in those days, the 12 cents, it was it was just wonderful. I would go in the store and see this, and of course you'd buy it right away, and you couldn't wait to be able to go out and get another. So that was just fun. Those were excellent. The Batman, of course, I loved Batman. That was one of my favorites. And World Finest was Batman and Superman. And this particular comic, I don't know if you can see, but this is the Batman symbol I grew up with, which is basically him like a bat with the big yellow letters.
Yeah.
That's the Batman symbol that I grew up
I
with.
think that was the one that they used on the TV show
Yes,
too, wasn't it? With
which
Adam
is much
West.
different than today.
Yeah.
But this is another original, a 12-cent comic. But Pete, I'm so sorry that you missed out on these, because just going there and finding these, and of course for little children, they had these Casper and Spooky comics. And there's Casper on there, and Wendy. We were talking about Casper and Wendy.
Yeah, I remember
And these
Casper.
were so much fun. You know, for maybe 5, 6, 7-year-olds, they would read these. And of course I did too. And these were wonderful. And these are original. These are original. So that was nice.
What I love about your collection, Kevin, is that it's so varied.
Yes.
A lot of people that collect comics, and when you read about their collections, it seems to be focused on the superheroes. And
Yes.
don't get me wrong, I was a Superman fan. I read a lot of those Superman comics, and I love them. But I love some of these other ones that you have, and they're not ones that come up very often. Do you have trouble getting them now, or?
Yes, these are impossible. Actually, speaking of something that I literally bought this in 1968. This is amazing to me. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is my favorite film of all time. And I got the comic, and it actually has a poster of the car inside. I keep it sealed because it's so precious and to me, and it's a little bit fragile at this point.
Sure.
We had opened up the Classics Illustrated before, and I was a little afraid because I hadn't opened them. But Gold Key put out, and here's Dark Shadows. That was a show in the 1960s.
Oh, I love Dark Shadows.
Barnabas
as a
Collins,
kid.
and of course
Yeah.
my favorite TV show when I was a child, because it was a horror TV show, vampires. And,
Yeah.
But these Gold Keys, which I think is what you're referring to, is something completely different. They would put out movies. You could get James Bond movie, and inside was always a poster with these. You could get a little poster, which was fun. So I've held on to this since 1968. I'm very proud of that. And you're right. I did have a very varied interest as far as the comic. It wasn't just Batman. It wasn't just Archie. It was,
Right.
there's a Marvel comic. Now, a lot of people they sometimes only have Marvel comics.
Right.
Only have DC comics. But for me, I like them both. Here's Submariner and Hulk in one comic. And this is, what was this? 25 cents. That was expensive. But that's because there was a comic with both the characters in there. So that's another example of something that I
It's
enjoyed.
like 2 for the price of 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was fun. And every week to go there, I was in the store almost every other day.
Yeah.
And in those days, so many comics came out because kids were reading comics the way today they're on their phones. I'm so sorry that the kids of today, because of course, it's no secret that every Wednesday I'm in the comic book store.
Yeah.
Wednesdays is New Comic Book Day. So if you go to a comic book store, and there are many around, I go in Matawan, and every Wednesday the new comic books come in. And I still am there every Wednesday, getting my new Archie, getting my new Batman.
So they're still publishing them, huh?
Oh, even more, not as much as back in the day.
Right.
But they are. They're still publishing.
Yeah.
So it hasn't
I
all,
wasn't-
all gone over to the digital world.
No. There's a lot in the digital.
Yeah.
A lot in the digital. But
I wasn't aware that you could still buy current comic books so much. So that's interesting.
these are just a few.
Oh, those ones, yes.
This is Aquaman. Aquaman's son, who happens to be gay. Superman's son, who happens to be gay. And these are all brand new. And this is an X-Men wedding with two of the men from the X-Men in it. And
So they're
this
very
is,
topical and
Yeah.
up to date.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
this is a Robin with his boyfriend. So yes, and of course, people are going to say, "Well, why are you showing off gay comics?" Because you know something, that 10-year-old who was looking back in 1968 at those comics, wouldn't it have been wonderful for me to see representation?
Yes.
Obviously, I didn't even know
Yes.
in those days that I was gay,
Yeah.
but today, for a 10 or 12 or a middle school kid
Right,
to be able to go in and
see
get
themselves,
a comic
yeah.
of Superman's son who's gay.
Yeah.
Is that the most wonderful thing?
Yeah. Yeah, it
You know,
is.
and Aquaman's son and Robin, my gosh. You know, it's just amazing to me.
You have all of these people who are no longer excluded.
Yes. Yes, which
Yeah.
is out of this world. Now, Pete, I have to tell you, I'm sorry that you weren't into comics because you missed out on something else.
What did I miss?
Which was what I'm going to talk about next. And when I got to be about 12, I started watching Chiller Theater and all my horror movies. Probably even before then. King Kong.
Saturday
Godzilla.
night, 7:30, Channel 11, Chiller Theater.
So into it. So the comic books of the day certainly
Yeah.
reflected Werewolf by Night or Tomb of Dracula.
Oh, wow.
And they were out, and of course, there was nothing in these that was offensive. They were just fun
Yeah.
vampire or werewolf. But the wonderful thing, which I'm sorry you missed out on, which for me was a highlight of my youth, was Creepy and Eerie, which came out. And these were how much expensive? I can't even remember how much these were, like 35 cents at the time. Here's a 1968 yearbook of Creepy. And these were just wonderful horror comics that I fell in love with at the time. So I kind of graduated at that point from some of these into more of the horror comic.
I do remember Famous Monsters of Filmland growing up. And once in a while, I would grab one of those
I'm happy to hear that.
because they had a whole thing about Lon Chaney Sr. and playing the Phantom of the Opera and how he did the makeup. And they had photographs of Lon Chaney there with his makeup kit and putting the makeup on. And every once in a while, I'd see one of those and I'd grab one.
I have a few of those at home. I couldn't find one last night when I was looking, but I do have those. And as I was saying before, luckily, the Archie comics decided that I needed my own comic. So they put out the Kevin comic. Actually, it's Kevin Keller, who happens to be gay. And this is a very, very popular comic. Came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that was a wonderful thing. And Archie is one of my favorite comics.
I used to love Archie, too.
Oh, I have so many Archie comics at home. And just enjoy that so much. And of course, Pete, and I'm sure you remember these from back in the day. And I still get Mad Magazine today. And Cracked was a magazine that was kind of like trying to be mad, but never could.
Yeah.
But the Mad Magazine, and this is 30 cents. This is from 1967.
Wow. I used to have a subscription to Mad Magazine.
Wow.
And I used to like the back page with the
fold.
fold. And it was, and you used to look at it, and I used to try to figure out, without folding it, what it was going to wind up to be. It's hard to describe to our listeners, but it was like you folded the picture, and it went from being one optic into something totally different.
There's a Mad fold in
Yeah.
And you literally fold the page, and then it becomes
a
completely
whole different image.
something
yeah.
different. Amazing.
But and do you remember when they had I think we talked about this when we did the records. They had It's a Gas was a record that was in one of the Mad magazines.
Yes.
And it was a cardboard record. Mm-hmm. And you could actually play it on your.
I remember bringing the cereal record with Bobby Sherman's cereal record.
That's how we were talking about it, and it was nothing more than like an instrumental with a fart. It was like
What was it? A fart or was that
or
a
a burp? Maybe
burp. Yeah.
I don't know.
It was a burp.
Well, okay, whatever.
They tried to elevate it a little bit.
but it came in Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
Now, Mad Magazine is still published. I still get it.
Is it really still around?
Yes,
I thought
and I still get it.
was
The new magazine.
defunct years
Actually,
ago.
the new issue was out this week. I just didn't get to the comic book store because of the storm the other day.
Right.
But I get that I don't know how long. I don't know if it's every couple of months they do it now, but it's still published. Obviously, none of the people there. Most of them are gone now.
I would imagine so. Yeah. Now, is there a one that a magazine that you would love to have in your collection that you don't have?
Like Superman #1, maybe?
No, actually, you know something? I've never been one of those people that wanted the #1 of Superman, whatever. There's a Batman comic. It's called Rainbow Batman. And on the cover, it's Batman, and he has all different color suits, Batman suits. And Robin says, "What's the matter, Batman?" And he says, I must, be another colored Batman tonight. He was red Batman, orange Batman, and of course it's become in the gay culture something different.
Yeah.
But that particular comic, I would love to have. It's way over my limit.
Oh, sure.
And at my age, I have no interest in spending $600 on a comic to look at it one time.
Yeah.
You and I were talking about this last night when you looked up Batman #1, which is
Superman
#1, which is kind of like the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Right. And how much is that worth
It's like
now?
over $600,000.
Wow.
Wow.
Because I guess because so many of them have been destroyed.
Yeah.
Aside from it being just old and of historic value, there just aren't a lot of them left around, and those that are in maybe not the best condition. So condition, of course, plays into its value, but it was sold last when I don't know what the date was for over $600,000.
Yeah. When they're evaluating a comic book, do you know what the things are that they're evaluating? What are they looking for?
If there's any creases on or any tears, if the pages have any tears on them, how yellowed it is. I mean, there's so many things.
Yeah.
But when the comic shops that I go into, they all have for sale those comics basically in a big plastic, and on top you see grading, like 6, 7, 8, 9, and it's $250 to $1,000.
Wow.
I really have no interest at this point to get any of those because you can't even take them out to read them.
Yeah, it's not. You
And
can't
in my
enjoy
mind,
them.
everything I have, my physical media, my comics, my records, I play and
You play 'em.
I use everything. There are people who I know who buy record albums that come out and they won't even open them or play them. They just keep them because it's, oh, this is wonderful. That's fine. But you know something? If I buy something,
Yeah, it's meant
no
to
matter
be
what
enjoyed.
it is,
It's meant
what
to be
comic,
enjoyed.
and I bought some of these from the store. I open them and I read them. I wish this may be worth a little bit of money because this is an original. But probably if someone looked at it and said, "Oh, it's got this, it's got that." But #1, I would never want to get rid of it because it's something. It's a cherished memory of my childhood.
Absolutely.
My mother took me to the movies to see it. We sat through it twice, and I watch it every chance I get at home. Of course, I still have the movie, and I love it. So these are just a lot of memories. The Dark Shadows. What a memory.
I love the TV show with Jonathan Frid
Oh yeah.
and David Selby.
I'm just now. Could I ask you, Pete?
Mm-hmm.
Did the stores in the area have those spindles? Did you physically see the comics?
I did.
And you had no interest.
I wasn't drawn to it.
See, no one said to me, "Kevin, go over and buy one of these."
Yeah.
It was just, wow.
I was one of those kids that I had the transistor radio
Okay.
attached to. I'm surprised that one of my ears isn't square from having those things pressed up against my head. I loved radio from the time I was a child, and I'd listen to it all the time. And I loved television almost just as much. Print media, I just never, I never got drawn into it. So how many comic books do you have in your collection?
Not a lot. I can't say. I will tell you that it's nowhere near my record collection.
Yeah.
I have collections of Submariner, Superman. My comic book collection is probably about 1,000 to 1,500, maybe more. I have a lot of books on comics that they printed since, on Archie, on DC. On Stan Lee, on different comics, since that they're making nowadays with basically anthologies of stories of the entire time.
Okay.
That all the comics are in there.
Yeah.
From a certain time, and that I enjoy reading. Even the horror comics, Vault of Horror, and Tales of the Crypt. They make books, coffee table books, with those in them, and I enjoy those so much. So for me, it's something that's enjoyable. And I enjoy having them, but I really do want to read them.
Who would you say, and I know that you collect more than superheroes,
Yes.
but if you were going to do like a Mount Rushmore of the top 4 superheroes, who would you put up there? And who would be the top 4 villains?
I say Batman's on top for me.
Yeah.
Then Namor, which is Marvel comic. He would be in there. Robin. And Batgirl. Batgirl's such a big, I don't know why, because I guess the show, maybe that outfit that she wore. I love Batgirl, and Batgirl comics too, of course. And villains, Joker's number 1, of course. And then Penguin. It has to be Batman villains because they were so fun. Egghead.
Mm-hmm.
Who else is there? Oh,
The
Catwoman.
Riddler or the
Catwoman,
Joker.
Yeah.
I thought that the TV show was probably truer to the Batman comic. It was meant to be a comic book on network television.
Yes.
Because remember, first of all, it was very, very campy. And also, remember they would have the fights and then on the screen it would say biff, ouch,
yeah, it was
bang,
definitely a comic.
punch. And so it definitely was a comic set to television. After it left the TV realm, the Batman franchise, it became something different. And I think the villains became something different. The villains got, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Kevin, but I think that the villains got a heck of a lot darker
Oh, much.
when they went to the screen.
Much.
Whereas in the comic books and in the TV show, the villains were funny.
Yeah.
They were meant to be laughed at. Nobody did the Penguin better than Burgess Meredith. I thought Burgess Meredith was like the definitive Penguin. I mean, nobody did, what was it? The Riddler was Frank Gorshin.
Yes.
Nobody did it better than these guys, even in the movies. I think that the guys who appeared on the TV show, they had the right feel for that comic book feel.
Yeah.
That got lost in the movie franchises.
Yeah.
I love Burgess Meredith.
I see on Twitter. Oh yeah, the best. On Twitter, on all these platforms, you see people fighting to the death about who's better Batman, who's the better Superman, which movie is the best. The people have knockdown, drag out fights about these movies and who's the best and which is better and which studio does it better and everything else. And to me, it all comes back. It all comes down to this. It all comes down to the comic because this was the original. This was it. Now, this was Batman.
Yeah.
It was a comic book. It's not something to be sitting there and having a university challenge for. It's enjoyable. You're supposed to sit back and just really sit and escape and enjoy it. And if these movies, whichever one and by whoever, can somehow get a little bit of that. And at these days, they're not. I think the TV show did best.
Yeah.
And with that, but if they can even get back to the comic book a little bit, I'm so thrilled. For me, at 67, to be living in a time when there's so many superhero movies, I see
It's
that
amazing how many have been coming out.
Yeah. I mean, they're just one after next. I see that little 11-year-old me looking at that spindle and seeing these in wonder with my eyes open, saying, I didn't realize a time in my life would come where they'd all be on the big screen in front of me
I
and be
imagine
so popular.
You know, I think the thing that's driving that is that people are looking for escape.
Yeah.
They're looking for something fun, uplifting, and it's a lot of escapism. But life is tough. It's freaking crazy out there. And so I think that, you know, you get to spend a couple hours in a darkened theater, and this kind of pulls you out of all of the crap that's going on out there for at least a couple hours, albeit they are darker.
Definitely. And I'd say to anyone at any age,
Yeah.
if if you say to yourself, oh, I find myself down sometimes, or I find myself whatever, I wonder what I can do, or if I have some free time, go over to one of these go over to Zap Comics, go over to the Geekery in Matawan. Just walk in the door. The people that work there, they'll be thrilled to help you. And they'll say, oh, do you like Batman? Do you like Superman? Who do you like? And they'll recommend a comic. You take that comic home, I promise you, you'll just sit there and it's just a wonderful thing to enjoy. And it takes you away from everything for 15 or 20 minutes. When I go in there every Wednesday, I'm thrilled to see what's new. I just can't wait to get home and sit there and open it up and dive into it.
What do comics cost now?
$3.99
Wow.
instead of 12
Wow.
cents. $4.99. $3.99 and $4.99. And then if it's an 80-page special, it's $10.
Wow.
This is the paper equivalent of when Kevin talks about collecting vinyl. It's the paper equivalent of put the needle on the record and let it take you someplace different.
Oh, yeah. Open that comic and let Batman take or Superman or the Hulk or whoever. So enjoyable. So enjoyable.
Kevin, we're going to have you back to talk about your DVD collection.
Thank you. I can't wait. I cannot wait.
So happy to have you back again, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for this.
Maureen and I are going to be doing an upcoming show. I don't know why we decided to do this. We
We're nuts,
must
but-
be gluttons for punishment, but we said, ask us anything. It is the first time that we've done this in the 4 years that we've done the Sonic Boomers podcast. So I think that'll be the next one that we're recording in the next few
And
days.
if you want to pose a question, you know how to do it.
Yep.
Find us on
Find us on
Facebook.
Facebook or go to the Sonic Boomers at AOL.com. It's Pete Torriello on Facebook, Maureen Torriello on Facebook.
Right. Post your question. We'll be putting ourselves on the line.
Join us again soon for the next edition of the Sonic Boomers. We'll talk to you then.